Good morning. Morning.
Good morning, sir. We can hear you clearly.
Thank you.
Emanyana ke log in pin. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Honorable members, I welcome all members who have logged into the virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer and meditation. Thank you. Honorable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitute a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, applies. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in the sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone, and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icon on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her own hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary point of order or interjections. Lastly, members, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session, and therefore any decisions will be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. The first order of the day is the consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development and Oversight visit to Northwest Province from 27 to 31 March 2023. I now call the Honorable Siwela as a first speaker on this order.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members in our midst. I hereby rise to table a report of the Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development, having undertaken the oversight to the Northwest Province from the 27th to the 31st March 2023, adopted on Wednesday, the 24th of May 2023. It reports as follows. It has got its introduction, which outlines all people and all areas touched, as well as entities which were supposed to be into that particular program. It has got its own background, which includes all participants, as well as entrepreneurs from different categories, as it has been outlined in detail in the report. It also includes observations by the Portfolio Committee, which is also in detail during the 4 days tour. And it also includes recommendations by the portfolio committee. We have once put it into ITC. We are requesting that the report be considered by the department chairperson. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Honorable Mabika from the DA.
Angibonge sihlalo. Sihlalo walendlu kuliqiniso lingaphikisa ukuthi ukuvakashela kwekomiti eNorthwest kwasivula amehlo nokwenza sabona ukuthi mkhulu umonakalo osezweni lonke kunalokho esakubona. Ngoba kwakhona eNorthwest la sasivakashele khona asivakashelanga zonke indawo lapho umnyango ufake khona izimali. The visit also proved to the committee that they need to join SIFA and SIDA into one entity is urgent, because keeping them as separate as they are right now is not getting the department anywhere. These two entities are supposed to be working hand in hand in assisting small businesses, which is in most of the cases not happening. For instance, you find that a small business gets assisted by SIDA in developing a small business, a business plan, and only to find that the same plan is rejected by SIFA for funding purposes. Bese uxakeka ukuthi kanti yini lena efuna uSIFA uSIDA angayazi, even though they belong together. The committee discovered a number of discrepancies by SIFA where they claimed to have paid grants of 10,000 to small businesses. But when we got there, as the committee, not even a single one had received such. Instead, they all got 350,000, and the officials were found wanting in trying to explain as to what happened. Also, the committee continued to engage with small businesses that were ought to have been given some loans by SIFA through intermediaries. And it became clear that the intermediaries are abusing the intended beneficiaries by charging them exorbitant interest fees such as 25%, something which clearly benefits them the most. So the issue of intermediaries becomes one important and urgent that the department should look into. SIFA in its current form looks like is spending money for the sake of spending without a proper monitoring strategy. For example, the committee visited Kings and Queens where millions have been spent by SIFA through Interlimet Finance. But when we got there, we were told they were last seen about a year ago, meaning SIFA did not make any follow-up until when the committee visited. Questions is, how many of the kings and queens are out there in the whole country that are not servicing their loans without being followed by SIFA? In a case of Vince Cyber Cave, we got 110,000 direct lending from SIFA, but did not know, SIFA did not know that the machines that they bought were moved to Gauteng, which also clearly shows the lack of monitoring by SIFA. Some of their clients that we visited were not available, like the one that was said to be in Mozambique, when it was known that the committee was coming. Nyami berries could not be found on site, so we could not trace an amount of 54.4 million on the day. All these left us with more questions than answers as to how many of the similar issues are all over the country. Chairperson, kwale report nangokuhambela kwekomiti eNorthwest kusivezele ngokusobala ukuthi ukuze umnyango wenze lento okufanele uyenze ukuthuthukisa osomabhizinisi abancane, ziyadingeka izinguquko ngokushesha ukuhlanganisa ukusebenza kukaSIFA noSIDA if we are to see this department improving the lives of small businesses in the country. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The EFF. EFF. IFP. IFP.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Is that the EFF?
Yes, sir.
Proceed, please.
Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili. Sasikade sino hulumeni wobandlululo, namhlanje sino hulumeni wohwaphilizo. On the 27th, up to 31 March 2023, we identified the following areas of concern regarding SIFA's loan programs implementations. Spaza Shops Support Program. All beneficiaries did not receive their full amount of 10,500, Chairperson. In interest rate charged by intermediaries. Abo middlemen. Verification of clients funded by SIFA intermediaries in Talimatch. Post-investment support to SIFA direct lending clients. It's very much disgusting, Chairperson, to hear that in the report on Wednesday, this Wednesday, 13 September 2023, SIFA is admitting that some of the MFIs and RFIs are not registered and licensed by the National Credit Regulation. This is illegal and borders on criminality. Furthermore, SIFA appears to be aware that all spaza shops did receive only 3,500 rand instead of 10,500, and they did it deliberately, Chairperson. Since they are conflicted with criminality in all their activities, how can a money reported and recorded that it was given to companies later can be topped up? Because they said they've topped up. How can they top up? Where is the top up comes from? It takes the portfolio committee to go on oversight, to only learn about it. If oversight was not conducted, there were no top ups that were going to happen, Chairperson. Esakubone NatWest kokungahlonitshwa nanokuhwaphilizwa kwezimali zasomabhizinisi abasakhasayo. Imali zabakhokhi bentela egameni losomabhizinisi abasakhasayo, Chairperson, imihla nemihla kuwo wonke ama-provinces. Kuyoze kusize uhulumeni we-economic freedom fighters unyaka ozayo uma sesithatha lelizwe. Yingakho sinxenxa bonke abemi boMzantsi Afrika ukuthi bavotele i-economic freedom fighters. Ngokudayela nje u-star 134 224# kuphela ukuze umuntu abhalisele ukuvotela, ngoba sikhathele uhulumeni wohwaphilizo weqembu elibusayo ukhongolose. Ngakho sithi uSIFA nawo wonke ama-officials ababoshwe and bamiswe kuwo wonke ama-operations ngesikhathi kusacwaningwa kubhekwa ubuhwaphilizo babo, ngoba kuyacaca ngokumhlophe, Chairperson, ukuthi akukona kwase-Northwest kuphela, ngoba uSIFA yena qobo ngoLwesithathu kule veki engikhuluma ngalo uvumile okokuthi bayakwazi lokho bathophaphile izimali esathola ukuthi zange abantu bazinikezwe, okusho ukuthi wonke lo mnyango kaSIFA unohwaphilizo and bayadinga ukuthi bajeziswe ngokusemthethweni, futhi bamiswe ukuthi banikezwe izimali ezabakhokhi bentela. Njengoba benze lokhu kumele kube khona ojeziswayo, and kuyabonakala wonke umnyango kaSIFA wonke u-conflicted. So siyacela ukuthi la abasuswe nakuwo umnyango we-small business ume usida okwamanje enze wonke ama-services njengoko thina siwu-EFF sisithi umnyango we-small business umsebenzi wawo mawuwenze ngokwawo ungathathi umsebenzi unika ama-entity.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. Thank you. UDM, ATM, good. AIC, COPE, PAC, the ANC.
Thank you, House Chair, and greetings to all the honorable members on the platform. Yes, indeed, we were part of this report as the chair of the committee outlined. We've also received a report from the CIFA on remedial action. I think we, as all the parties were involved, were saying that we don't want to play party politics, but we did find irregularities in the Northwest visit, and we wanted accountability and transparency on the issues that was picked up. The first issue that we picked up, Chairperson, was the lending interest rates. Now, given that we are a development finance institute, the micro lenders, we are asking that they are working under the Credit Regulatory Act and ensure that they don't charge exorbitant interest rates to our people. And that was ensured that the report came out to that effect. CIFA is negotiating with intermediaries to ensure that they comply with the NCR. There is a credit policy now that will ensure that there won't be excessive profits being driven. On the issue of the 7,000 on the 7,000 rand for the spaza shops, I think we were all collectively not happy with that the money wasn't given, but the report now indicates that all those people were paid. As at 30th of June, more than 6,600 spaza shop clients received their grants to the value of 69 million rand. So that was dealt with. The issue around the credit policy we picked up, we were concerned about one intermediary is in Mali, and the owners was using a Department of Home Affairs email address, and we asked for consequence management around that. There is charges, there is cases being laid. Those affected with the case around Kings and Queens, the misappropriation of more than 30 million. A charge sheet have been laid. We are awaiting the Ernst & Young report. Members of CIFA staff that was affected has been suspended. I think from our side, we are collectively agreeing that we don't want corruption, we don't want greed, but these are isolated incidents, and we're asking the department to give us a report to ensure that governance is being improved, and they also ensure that they will provide regular reports for us as the portfolio committee. So with that, Chairperson, we note the report, and we accept the findings of this report. And as the portfolio committee, we have approved the report for the submission of the House, and the ANC supports this report and seeks the recommendation for the House and approval of the report and all the remedial actions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. We shall now proceed to the second order, which is the consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor on joint oversight on living and working conditions in farming communities. I will now call the Honorable Mandela.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members, ladies and friends, comrades, Molweni, good morning, Goeiemorgen, and salam to you all. I thank you for your presence here this morning, and especially those of you who participated in the respective joint oversight visit to the 9 provinces. Your presence and the participation in the joint oversight visit, as well as proceedings of today, is an indication that our parliamentary democracy is alive and well. The bigger challenge for us is to ensure that we find ways to address the challenges, legislative gaps, and inefficiencies in the implementation of legislation. These oversight visits and the respective observations and recommendations are important first steps in ensuring that we fulfill our mandate as Parliament, as well as witnessing firsthand how the respective spheres of government interface and work cooperatively to implement their respective mandates, programs, and projects. Allow me, therefore, Chairperson, to thank the entities and stakeholders that participated in the oversight visit. All of you played a valuable role and have ensured that these oversight visits achieved its primary objective, including comprehensive oversight on executive action in implementation of the legislation aimed at improving the living and working conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers, and farmers. The government's commitments towards improved living and working conditions in farming communities, including work done by different stakeholders in the agricultural sector, and impact assessment of legislation affecting farm workers, make recommendations for legislative amendments. These objectives are a clear reflection of the historic challenges that this sector has faced. Whilst we have achieved much over the past 3 decades, these oversight visits clearly reflect that while significant milestones have been achieved and there has been a significant shift in the power relations in the sector, much remains to be done. As His Excellency President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela reminded us, I quote, "As long as there is one single human being suffering anywhere in the world, our struggle is far from over," close quote. Our struggle in terms of expanding South Africa's agricultural potential, addressing security of tenure and conditions of employment on farms is far from over. We owe it to ourselves and posterity to ensure that we contribute in a positive way through effective implementation of the legislation, as well as holding those tasked with responsibility of implementation of policies, programs, and projects accountable for many of the deficiencies and contradictions that we encountered during these oversight visits. Since 1994, we have introduced wide-ranging policies and legislative instruments in improving the living and working conditions on farms, despite a plethora of legislative and policy formulations and interventions. Farm dwellers, as part of the vulnerable people in South Africa, continue to encounter a number of challenges, including tenure insecurity, threatened livelihoods, and violation of their human and labor rights. It is vital that these challenges are adequately addressed when the recommendations of this oversight report are finalized. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Mbabama. The DA. The EFF. EFF. IFP.
EFF. Honorable Chair, thank you so much.
Okay.
The EFF called for these investigations. The title of this report itself reveals a lot about lack of political will, courage, and vacillation by those in government who possess state power and yet don't know how to use it on behalf of the most vulnerable in society. According to the 2017 census of agriculture, there were 40,000 commercial farming units in South Africa, most of which are owned by white people. Having concluded the joint oversight of the PC on agriculture, land reform and rural development, and that of employment and labor, we have come to understand quite clearly that most of those farms are not only places of agribusinesses, they are also spaces or places where some of the most vulnerable groups, communities or individuals in society live. Some of them, especially labor tenants, have lived there for generations. Vulnerability of most farm workers, farm dwellers and labor tenants is demonstrated by prevalence of unlawful eviction from farms, constructive evictions through cutting of water supply, limiting the number of livestock the household can keep, and abuse of human rights and physical assault, murder of farm dwellers and farm labor tenants, malicious damage to property on farms and assault of farm workers or farm dwellers. Available data about income inequality and poverty dynamics in farming areas using the South African Multidimensional Poverty Index shows that there is a high level of poverty in farming areas when compared to urban areas and traditional areas, whether you look at health, education, living standards, and economic activity. Honorable Chair, this brings me to the question about the failure of government to address challenges in farming areas and of farm workers, farm dwellers, and labor tenants. Continuation of unlawful evictions and threats of evictions as well as constructive evictions is a form of violence and brutality meted against farm dwellers and labor tenants. An example of this is the case of a widow outside Newcastle in an area called Nomandini, who, together with the entire family, were assaulted by a group of farm owners. Cases were opened, but nothing came out of those cases. Landlessness arising from failure to acquire land for labor tenants and farm dwellers makes these vulnerable people continue to be second-class citizens without full tenure rights on their own land that their families occupy for generations before the arrival of the current white owners. Honorable Chair, women rights abuses we have heard about in Mpumalanga, Western Cape, KZN, and Free State are worst forms of farm violence and brutality in a democratic society. These atrocities are commissioned and committed by a combination and collaboration between farmers, private security companies in connivance with police and magistrates. Human rights violations and poor living conditions is an assault on the dignity and rights of farm workers and communities. This has got to end, Honorable Chair. We are making proposals on the amendment of ESTA, amendments of Section 8, subsection 2 to subsection 5 and Section 9, subsection 2 and subsection 3. We further make proposals to strengthen Section 8, subsection 2 and 3 of ESTA in order to ensure that there are stronger tenure rights protection, especially for women and children who are survivors of an occupier who has fallen victim of farm evictions. Honorable Chair, for the misery to end, for these vulnerabilities to end, for the suffering to end, farm workers, farm dwellers, and farm labor tenants need courageous leadership and government. The EFF offers such leadership. We are happy that this investigation has been done and now presented before Parliament and is finding made public. However, we know that the ANC government, which people told in so many attempts and telling Honorable Mandela and his ANC delegates that niyabasaba abelungu repeatedly. We know that ANC leaders lack courage and are indeed scared of whites. And they would rather, Honorable Chair, pretend dead rather than to liberate us from this condition. We appreciate that these discussions has come, and we call on our people that the EFF and 2024 will become.
Your time has expired.
And they've got EFF.
Honorable Matiase.
Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Briet.
Thank you, House Chair. Die gesamentlike oorsig oor die werks- en lewensomstandighede op plase het baie van die huidige probleme van die landbousektor wat vandag nog kwel aan die groot klok gehang. Wat dit egter ook na vore gebring het, was die onvermoë van die ANC om te regeer, dat hul sedert 1994 nie beloftes nagekom het nie en dat hul beleidsrigtings die inwoners van Suid-Afrika gefaal het. Die mosie wat gelei het tot die oorsigbesoeke en gevolglik hierdie verslag, is reeds in 2020 deur hierdie huis aanvaar. Dit was egter geen haas of erns met hierdie mosie nie en die werk wat daaruit voortvloei nie. En die uitdatum moes gevolglik die heeltyd aangeskuif word. Daar was tientalle vergaderings gewees van die gesamentlike komitees wat bespreek het wat prioriteit moet neem, hoe ons te werk moet gaan, watter departemente gaan watter plase identifiseer en wat ondersoek moet word. Dit moet egter genoem word dat die 5+ verskeie kere talle slaggate en leemtes in die beplanning uitgewys het. Dit het wel gerieflikheidshalwe deur die regerende party geïgnoreer en daar was bloot voortgeploeter met vooropgestelde idees en uitkomste. Die proses is in 'n kiesafdelingsperiode ingedruk en moes die res van die proses afgejaag word. Die verslag is ook amper deurgedruk sonder dat lede die geleentheid gehad het om 140 bladsye verslag te lees. Wat verder kommerwekkend was, is die Departement van Arbeid se deurlopende onbetrokkenheid by die beplanning en identifisering van plase wat besoek moes word. Daar is ook nie een plaas deur hulle identifiseer waarheen ons nie verdwaal het nie. Dan maak die pleidooie van boere en werkers en die probleme wat identifiseer is sin. Arbeidsaangeleenthede het bewys dat die Departement van Arbeid nie beheer het oor wat hulle doen nie. Sekere boere het vir meer as 2 jaar gepleit dat die departement hul help met basiese wetgewing en vereistes en wat tot op datum nie besoek is nie. Ander weer word onregverdig onder die vergrootglas gehou en word tot 1 keer 'n maand besoek. Daar is ook geweldige uitbuiting deur arbeidsmakelaars van plaaswerkers en ook boere. Grondhervormingsprojekte is ook besoek. En deur die bank het die regering hierdie begunstigdes geval. Ons het in die Vrystaat by een projek gestop, waar die begunstigdes al vir meer as 10 jaar probeer om met die regering se hulp addisionele grond te koop, maar geen hulp ontvang nie. By ander weer is die begunstigdes net in kennis gestel dat iemand anderste nou hulle grond gaan bewerk. Vele sosio-ekonomiese probleme is ook identifiseer. Een groot leemte wat ontstaan het as gevolg van die sluiting van plaaskole is dat leerders nie gereeld skool toe gaan nie. Die broke skoolvervoer inisiatief wat die staat het die kinders gefaal en dit maak dat leerders gereeld nie skool bywoon nie en dit dra by tot die geweldige uitvalkoers op skole, maar ook ander sosio-ekonomiese kwale soos dwelm en misbruik en tienerswangerskap. Wat tydens hierdie oorsigbesoek duidelik was, is dat indien daar nie oor grense heen samewerking gaan geskied nie, Suid-Afrika se landbousektor deur die bank armer gaan wees. Ek dank.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The UDM. ATM. Good. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, my understanding is one of the purposes of this oversight is to establish the working conditions of particularly farm workers. Now, I hear some of my colleagues commenting, perhaps criticizing what is actually happening in the farms. But I think we need to differentiate between farm owners and farm workers. Not every farm worker can become a farm owner. And I say this, with the number of farms that in terms of our land restitution process that were taken and given to others, and the response or the results out of that, whereby many of these farms have become redundant, must also be taken into consideration. Now, one of the things that we have identified as a problem, and I think we must be objective in our thinking, is that when it comes to accommodation on farms for farm workers, we know this is a business and that at some stage and time, farm workers will retire or they will be deceased, their family members, and quite often they are large families. Farm owners cannot be expected to continue turning their farms into a residential unit. So as the NFB, we found a solution that when you employ a farm worker, we believe what should happen, together with the local municipality and authority where they are, the farm owners must enter into an agreement put them on a waiting list for a house, and at the same time contribute a small amount to the municipality on a monthly basis. So when they retire, on retirement, they can move from the farm into their own homes, built by the municipality who provided the land, but also with contributions from the farm owner, which will make it a win-win situation. If you fail to do that, Chairperson, it means that you will not be able to farm at some stage because you will make this entire thing into a residential complex. We need to be mindful of that. We must also be mindful that these farm workers are human beings. Often you find the electricities have been disconnected, water supplies, because farm owners need them off the farms and they are not willing to move. Correctly so, because they've spent their entire lives there. So there has to be some beneficiation process which must be initiated by government with local authority and the farm owners. We believe this will go a long way in solving that problem. The other thing we want to raise is the issue of, if you remember many years ago, Chairperson, farm workers used to be paid with the DOC system, which created alcohol fetal syndrome, which means we have a massive alcohol problem in the country. And that is why we are calling on a fund to be created with contribution from farm owners and things so that we could deal with the high levels of alcohol consumption in South Africa. These are just our recommendations. The National Freedom Party will support the report tabled here. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The AIC? COPE? PAC? Honorable Mtabe.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to you and the honorable members present on the platform. I think it is important that we put
Honorable
context
Mtabe.
in which Parliament Department of the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture,
Honorable
Rural Development. Yes, Chair.
Can you try?
Yes, I'm there, Chair. Can you hear me?
Can you try and switch off your video?
I'll switch it off.
Proceed.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, it is important that we put into context why Parliament had to agree on why these two portfolio committees of Agriculture, Rural Development, and Land Affairs, Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor, had to conduct this oversight. It was on the living and working conditions of farming communities on the 4th of November 2022. The ANC strive for equity in access to power and resources while working to realize farm workers' full potential in the agricultural, forestry, and fisheries sectors and the society at large. The ANC seeks to ensure farm workers' increasing and significant involvement in management, as well as in regional, local, and national decision-making bodies and procedures as per the values of the Freedom Charter. This is to safeguard farm workers' rights, support the development of their organizations, broaden the scope of extension work to enhance their knowledge and skills, encourage farmers to employ better labor practices, and attend to their needs for safe housing, services, and access to land for independent production. Our oversight noted that there is still an inadequate institutional capacity to monitor and respond to threats of evictions. And actual evictions could be among the principal factors that underlie most illegal evictions. Institutional weaknesses can be observed in the collapse of practical intergovernmental coordination forums and in their responses to evictions. We further noted the poor coordination and cooperation between law enforcement, other government entities, and municipalities. Hence, farm dwellers find themselves living along the roadsides. After evictions, or spending over a year living in emergency shelters, going to court without legal representations, and magistrates' court granting eviction orders without probation reports or not subjecting their orders to review by the Lands Claims Court has been a major challenge. Hence, it is very important to monitor the relevant government entities so that farm dwellers receive necessary assistance on time against illegal evictions and all other challenges that they are facing.
Thank you
The ANC,
very much.
thank you. The ANC support the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. We shall now proceed to the third order, which is the consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriations on oversight visit to the Department of Defense and institutions in Gauteng province from 19 to 22 April 2022. I will now call Honorable Kaiso from the ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. Honorable members, the collaborative efforts and dedication of the members of the committee members who diligently performed this oversight tour to address urgent concerns regarding the SANDF operations, difficulties, and its crucial role in delivering security services for the nations are reflected in this report. The primary purpose of the oversight visit was to allow the committee to engage with the South African National Defence Force leadership, organized labor, and other key stakeholders on various issues of interest affecting the SANDF and conduct physical inspection on SANDF facilities where it was considered necessary by the committee. Given the recent continued baseline reduction on the budget allocation for the SANDF, the committee wanted to assess the capacity and ability of the SANDF to protect and defend the sovereignty of the Republic as envisioned in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The oversight visit highlighted the concern about the continued reduction in defense budget, which has the potential of possible implosion of the domestic defense manufacturing capability, which would necessitate South Africa to be dependent with potential negative externalities to the sovereignty of the state. We cannot gamble with our sovereignty in this manner. There is no country in the world that can underfund its military. We should not be taking this path. The budget cuts have had a negative impact on the department, such as delays or lack of training and retention of the existing military personnel, the lack of attraction and recruitment of highly skilled military personnel, the reduction in the morale and commitment among the existing military personnel, and slow procurement of maintenance of tools of trade, including ammunition, military gear, vehicles, and planes. This could have dire consequences for the country. We have further noted with concern violations of the PFMA in relation to procurement in the SANDF. There is a need for institutionalized consequent management for the compliance with our laws. The SANDF is entrusted with a huge responsibility for protecting the citizens of our country and securing the future of generations to come. The institution should not be part of the problem that we seek to eradicate. Based on what we have observed as a committee on oversight, we make the following recommendation: that the Department of Defense and the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure should expedite the transfer of maintenance responsibilities from Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to the SANDF in areas where there is existing capacity within the SANDF. In line with the committee recommendation that we made in 2018 after the oversight visit to the defense facilities in the Free State province, that the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure explore alternatives on constructing new sites to host government department to avoid paying hefty amounts of lease contracts. As a starting point, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure must conduct government land audits both nationally and internationally for the construction of government-owned buildings. That the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure should provide a list of all the incomplete projects and all government institutions who are defaulting on paying rent and for the other services in government-owned buildings. That the Department of Defense should embark on a public education program to create awareness to the surrounding communities, and that the committee should engage the Department of Water and Sanitation to encourage initiative of creating public awareness. We therefore, as a committee, submit this report and recommendation for consideration by the House. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. The DA? EFF?
Thank you, House Chair. I'm affected by the failures of the ANC here of locating, House Chair, so I will request to keep my video closed as that. Thank you, House Chair. As the EFF, we support the committee report, House Chair. Last year, the Committee of Appropriations conducted an oversight visit to the South African Defence Force. It is concerning that this vital report is only now coming to the House for consideration, given the significant issues in the Defence Department. This department and its entities are crucial for our nation's sovereignty. There is a concerning lack of political leadership, particularly given the minister's background. Key issues we identified include the potential decline of domestic defense manufacturing, risking our nation's sovereignty if we become import dependent. Delays in recruiting and filling crucial military roles, insufficient training and retention of crucial military personnel, challenges in attracting and retaining skilled military staff, reduced morale among the military personnel, slow procurement and upkeep of essential equipment, including ammunition and military gear, organized labor, highlighted corruption, nepotism, and financial mismanagement within the South African National Defence Force. It was distressing to learn, for instance, that 46 generals earn over 1 million annually, contrasting with the low wages of many South African National Defence Force employees. During our visit to Denel, we noted severe issues due to political interference. Shockingly, Denel's organized labor reported on non-payment of worker salaries, resulting in decreased morale. The inability of these state-owned entities to attract and retain talented employees, leading to the loss of intellectual property to better paying competitors, is deeply concerning. Additionally, the committee raised concern about the lack of female representation within the senior management of South African National Defence Force. While the South African National Defence Force acknowledged challenges in coordinating with the safety and security, sector education and training for staff development, they committed to ongoing discussions on this matter. At Waterkloof Air Base, the committee was briefed on damages from a recent fire and its implications. Non-functioning fuel pumps due to the fire present significant risk. We urge the South African National Defence Force to collaborate with the National Treasury to secure funding for necessary repairs and safeguarding our nation's reputation. In conclusion, however, we accept the report. We urge Parliament to prioritize committee's report recommendation, ensuring timely action and avoiding delays of this report. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you very much. The FP? UDM? ATM? Good. Honorable Sheikh. The NFP? AIC? COPE? PAC? The ANC?
Good morning, Chairperson, and the greetings to the platform. Let me start by saying the ANC supports the adoption of this report. The South African National Defence Force is a critical component for the development of our country. We need to consistently strengthen the state's ability to respond to any eventuality, particularly in a globally volatile geopolitical environment. To safeguard the national democratic society, we seek to build
Honorable Mlenzane, can you hold on a bit? The Honorable Peter May from the Freedom Front Plus, you are disrupting the sitting. Can you please mute your microphone? Honorable Mlenzane, proceed, please.
Thanks, Mr. President. I was still saying we need to consistently strengthen the state's ability to respond to any eventuality, particularly in a globally volatile geopolitical environment. To safeguard the national democratic society, we seek to build and defend the aims of our democracy. The ANC took a decision at the dawn of democracy that the defense budget should not go below 2% of the GDP. But currently, the defense budget has decreased to 0.7% of the GDP. The government must then increase the resources available to SANDF so that each and all of its services can operate optimally and the defense force can effectively carry out its national and international tasks and operations. We welcome the constructive contribution that SANDF seeks to make in support of SMEs and ensuring food security through Project Kobatala, that is Eradicate Hunger Project. The project is aimed at decentralizing procurement of goods and services to the lowest practical level in order to engage locally with communities and through its spending capacity provide a catalyst for the development of small, medium, and micro-sized enterprises and small-scale and emerging farmers. This will come at a much cheaper cost for SANDF and will have the effect of ensuring sustainability of emerging farmers. Lastly, the Department of Defense has in-house capacity to undertake maintenance of all its infrastructure in a sufficient and cost-effective manner. The work between the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure and the Defense Department must be intensified. The Defense Force should be seen to be working for the people of South Africa, where all limitations in responding to disasters and infrastructure challenges, including maintenance, are dealt with. SANDF should be a reliable partner in attending all these that I have mentioned. And lastly, Chairperson, we have further noted with concern the fiscal state of demand and its failure to honor its salary obligations with employees. The entity must be assisted through financial and human resources to implement turnaround strategy. The work of DINEL and SANDF in general are actually interdependent. Both are at the heart of protecting the gains of our democracy and maintaining our sovereignty. I thank you, Chairperson. As I said before, we support the adoption of this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. Honorable members, may I suggest that every one of you who knows that they are going to speak be in an area where the background does not make noise to an extent where it disturbs the sitting of Parliament. We shall now proceed to the last and fourth order of the day, which is the consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies on oversight visit to Gauteng and Free State from 29 to 31 March 2023. I now call the Honorable Maneli.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members, fellow South Africans, Honorable House Chair, The mandate of this portfolio committee, like all other parliamentarians, is dictated to by the Constitution to be that of legislating, conducting oversight over the executive, and facilitate public participation. In exercising its oversight function, the committee oversees the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies, which is the CDT, Government Communications and Information Systems, GCIS, as well as entities reporting. The committee conducted oversight in Gauteng and the Free State on the 29th, 31st of March 2023, focusing on the two departments, the South African Post Office Sub, South African Broadcast Corporation, the SABC, MDDA, and SITA. The Broadcasting Digital Migration BDM program was the main focus given the May 2023 proposed analog switch off date, which was reported to the committee. In this oversight, the committee held several engagements and site inspections as detailed in the report. The engagement with the DCDT and its entities revealed challenges of funding and skills retention challenges in the FPB and the CASA, which the ministry committed to work on with the entities. The post office was in a dire state at headquarters, and many of the branches closing due to financial challenges, even with the allocation of the 2.4 billion bailout. However, it must be noted that our visit to the post office, which is the halfway house post office, confirmed the need to save the post office, as confirmed by the people who were on the queue for services. And these were people drawn from all races that you can think of. Indeed, the oversight also confirmed that the GCIS plays an important role in government communications. Even its staff complement, which is quite youthful, also confirmed that there's a need to keep that department working in order to incentivize the creativity that is brought by young people. Honorable House Chair, as we proceeded to go to SITA, the same could be said, that indeed SITA showed a reflection of young engineers that have been brought on board, in particular, like young engineers in the Committee of Fighting Pest. And of course, those are people who are also working hard in ensuring that SITA develop its own softwares as a way of responding to the challenges of digitizing the state, as well as ensuring the security of government ICT. And I think that's what this committee wants to
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maneli. The next speaker is Honorable Bodlani.
Chairperson Yankees, it's Honorable Mazzoni. Honorable Bodlani is on doing a public hearing, so I will be doing her report on her behalf.
Please proceed. Honorable Mazzoni. Honorable Mazzoni. We will come back to you. The EFF.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The Economic Freedom Fighters notes the report on the oversight visit to Gauteng and Free State by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, which revealed a critical lack of planning with regards to entities within the department. The oversight visit firstly revealed that indeed the South African Post Office is in a state of collapse, with at the time of the oversight 5.5 billion in terms of liabilities and a negative asset value of 6 billion. The revenue generating capacity of the South African Post Office is yet another cause for concern, as SAPO has had a consistent decline in revenue generation, meaning that it does not have the capacity to service its mounting debt. A major concern we hold as the EFF is that SAPO has 1,183 branches of operation, yet does not own 48% of those properties, which was revealed in the oversight visit. As a result, SAPO owes 255 million to landlords for conducting a public service as a government entity, a disappointing revelation that actually shows that our government is a tenant on its own land. Current Post Office Amendment Bill, which is in the phase of public hearings, will hopefully resolve the many crises confronting the Post Office in its attempt to expand the mandate of the Post Office and ensure that government departments utilize Post Office services and cooperates with informal traders in its operations. The EFF seeks to caution Centec, which the Portfolio Committee received complaints about their high pricing of purchasing of frequency and their seemingly harsh approach, which has led to the shutting down of community radio stations. Community radio stations are the backbone of communications in the public sector and serve as information hubs to the poorest of our communities. Their collapse, particularly ahead of the watershed 2024 national and provincial elections, is not only the compromise of communications, but serves as an undermining of South Africa's democratic project. Further to this, the EFF is concerned by the slow pace of the installation of set-top boxes in our communities ahead of the massive and highly delayed digital migration. The briefing which entails that South Africa runs the risk of utilizing analog technologies that are not appropriate for evolving global technology infrastructure, is a cause for concern. This must be addressed speedily to avoid the undermining of access to information to millions of South Africans. The EFF supports this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mazzoni.
Chairperson,
Yes, please proceed. My apologies.
my apologies to you, Chairperson. Chairperson, as the sixth Parliament draws to a close, the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies took its first oversight visit by visiting Gauteng and the Free State. As we note in this report, it is important to point out that the Committee of the Fifth Parliament did not conduct any other oversight visits. This illustrates how the past and recent years, this committee has relied on officials and a plethora of ministers to perform what they call desktop oversight. The committee's objective was to assess the implementation of the digital terrestrial television programs of the department. In a parliamentary question asked by the DA, Minister Gugubele revealed that since the inception of this expensive ANC pet project, the department had spent almost 1.7 billion rand to date on the broad digital migration. The 1.7 billion rand spent, yet the goal for the analog switch off keeps changing. On our visit of the government issue set-top boxes indicated they did not find value with their installation, and it comes with limited channels and poor content. As such, the communities prefer to rather pay for private satellite services. The rush to meet the elusive ITU deadlines saw a rollout of set-top boxes, which was done without due diligence, resulting in runaway costs while enriching service providers. This department is well placed to be a springboard for the South African economy, so we can compete globally. However, engagements with the department and its entities revealed worrying reports, which pose as a hindrance to realizing equitable access to ICT to all South Africans. Allow me to list but a few. An urgent need to review the ICASA funding model so that ICASA can continue to build sustainable collaboration efforts for the benefit of all South Africans. The need for the department to develop adequate regulatory frameworks for the Film and Publication Board. The need for the State Information Technology Agency to improve ICT services to communicate with government departments. As stated in the report and to the South African Post Office officials, SAPO spends a massive 70% of its budget on staff costs, yet ordinary South Africans do not get return on this huge expenditure, with SAPO branches closing daily. During the community visit to the SAPO offices, workers revealed that SAPO does not have cleaning services, putting its workers at risk. In fact, workers reported to the DA that they were asked to clean toilets in preparation for our very visit. The DA notes with great concern that SAPO owes over 5.4 billion rand to creditors and 3.2 billion rand to the Post Bank. I would like to remind us all that SAPO is a ticking time bomb and no amount of bailouts will restore this dead horse. We will be failing in our duty as members of parliament if we do not address the report to the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies and not address the elephant in the room, which is the SASSA grant payout debacle. This week was a new low for the government as thousands of beneficiaries were left stranded due to the failure by the Post Bank to pay social grants. If the Post Bank does not get its act in order, and if the Post Office Services does not get its act in order regarding the partial financial state that it finds itself in, the most vulnerable of society will remain the most vulnerable of society, and we as a committee would have failed in our duties. But Chairperson, it is not fair to blame just members of the committee, because we have tried over and over again to warn Minister Gungubele that this problem is coming. In the middle of October, the Post Office will be back in court to receive its final verdict regarding its liquidation status. And if the liquidation status remains, then SASSA will be in complete disarray, given the fact that 40% of SASSA recipients count on the post office to get their social grants. 675 and counting post offices have closed within the last 3 months. This is an unacceptable situation that the committee finds the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies in, and we will most certainly be calling for a most urgent investigation into both SAPO and the South African Post Bank, given the mass resignation of its board and the resignation of its board chairperson only yesterday, with very little being said by the minister and very little action being taken by the department. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The IFP, UDM, ATM, Good, AIC, COPE, PAC, Honorable Mdaga, the ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson of the House. The ANC remains committed to building and growing an economy that serves all South Africans. And to this end, we have focused all our effort in ensuring that the digital economy supports economic inclusion by breaking down barriers to information. The honorable members, it is important to note that the oversight to the provinces mentioned were very good. If it is important that we participate in the economy to leverage technology to create a more inclusive society wherein everyone is able to economically live a dignified life. Our National Development Plan envisions the ICT will underpin the development of dynamic information society, a knowledge economy that is more inclusive and prosperous. It is against this backdrop that we welcome the department commitment to connect a total of 40,000 sites as part of its broadband rollout program. Indeed, through a strong public-private partnership, this target will be met and well executed. It is our observation that the department as a whole and its entities, they are working very hard to ensure that all South Africans have an access to the digital economy. Honorable Chairperson, we must appreciate also the opportunity this oversight visit gave us to understand the challenges faced by the communities in these areas that we visited. We had the opportunity to interact with first-hand information with implementation agents and union which represent them at the department and its entities, as well as engaging communities and various institutions to get their views on the department's work, and as to the participatory element to the work we do as committee serving in this Parliament of the People of South Africa. Honorable members, we note and welcome the positive feedback that we received from the community radios. We also noted the challenges faced by these community radios in these provinces and also throughout the country. But we encourage by the department commitment that connectivity is key to develop information society. We are very happy that members of the community participated in their numbers. They were able to express their views when they're interacting with members of parliament. Now, as members of the committee, we understand the challenges faced by these communities that we interacted in this oversight visit. We are of the view that we will work together with the department to encourage it to ensure that they fulfill the commitment that they've made to these communities, that they will continue connecting these communities and ensure that they are able to have access to information that they need. Not only in the clinic that were visited, but also in libraries in these societies. We observed that many young people were able to use these libraries as an area where they will be able to access high Wi-Fi to ensure that they do their homework, that they are able to communicate as young people in order to develop each other or one another in terms of the information that is necessary for them to have access to the opportunity. The ANC support the report as presented by the chairpersons of the committee. And we hope that all members of parliament would support the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary session. The mini-plenary will now rise.